Hi, can you hear me? Hi, Paul, can you hear me? What's going on with my audio? Hello? Hi, Paul, can you hear me?
Hey, Lisa, how you doing? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
What is going on with my audio?
Why is it so? Your thing is like a little. Is your volume up or your speakers?
Oh.
What is that?
Hi, Paul, can you hear me? Sorry. Uh-oh.
Can you hear
Paul,
me?
can you? Yeah, I can hear you now. Oh my God.
I can
Hi.
kind of hear you. A little bit. Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, as long as you can see my screen and then hear my voice a little bit, it should be fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm using my son's earbuds because my earbuds are lost. So.
Okay, that's fine. Whatever works, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, how was your week? How was your class? Was it difficult this week or was it
We
fair?
were going over APIs and none of my APIs worked. So I was just like sitting there like frustrated because
Oh man. Yeah, API JSON ones, right? I think I saw.
yes, yeah, for JSON. And, I like to try and code along, just to try and, type along just to, follow along. And I couldn't even do that. So I was just sitting there like just dumbfounded, like, I don't know what's
Oh
going on
man.
because none
Yeah.
of my APIs would work. And I would go to office hours and time would run out. And I'm like, okay, then.
Yeah, well, we can definitely go over APIs if you want to, because you guys have homework on it, right?
Yes, we do.
And that one's due next week. Yeah, may- I'm actually working on that right now, trying to see if how I can like make it more efficient, like each one. The thing is with
Okay.
the thing is with APIs and JSONs, it's really like I was talking about this the other day. Is like if if you remember we talked about collections,
Yes.
like lists, like the tuple sets and dictionaries. So
Yes.
those ones are technically 1D. If you find a relationship between all three of them, so three being the first one, which is like a collection, it's just like a 1D line set of like elements. And then like the 2D being the second one is the data frame. We have like rows and columns, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then now you have this JSONs, and JSONs is like a list, a dictionary within a list. In essence, you had like so it's like a 3D. So within the list of element, you have a dictionary that can also so you have the keys and the values that, and you and the hardest part is probably just editing those and trying to like after because like if you look at the website for like how these guys are placed online, and then you kind of retrieve them kind of similarly to how data frames are being retrieved. It's just like read JSON pretty much, uh, and then you look at this and then you try to get some data from each one of them, and if you can find a relationship between those three things, and then seeing how you can access the data, manipulate it, add things to it, create like an output sentence. For JSON, that's really what that is you need to follow the logic of like what you're trying to access, which information, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
like filling it in that like the sentence into like what you want to get from it. We'll cover that if you need. So that one doesn't make sense as much as this guy.
Okay. Yeah, no, we can cover that next week. I just and you know what, for some reason when I try to open your MatPlotLib homework,
Yeah.
it just went straight to my browser. It wasn't going straight to my Jupyter notebook, and I was trying to like save it to my folder so I can get bash from there to get it to my Jupyter notebook, but
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
Okay. So when you put it in a folder IPYNB? Did,
Well, I was trying to download it because I keep oh, you know what? Let me try saving it first.
yeah, save it first and then put it somewhere. Yeah, I don't think you can access it if it's not on your local drive.
Yeah, okay, I'll figure that out. I'll figure that out afterwards.
Okay, but were you able to we'll just kind of like review this, kind of like see if there's some things that we can talk about, and then we'll go over like
Yeah,
the while loops and the for loops,
yeah.
and
Because
then
because to be honest with you, I'm just getting like a little frustrated. Not with you. Frustrated because like I'm watching these videos, and I'm trying to follow along, and it's like not clicking. And I was with study groups the other day, and just trying to like, and I hate copying code because I want to be able to do this myself.
yeah,
And
yep,
plus, when I was in college, plagiarism was not allowed.
yeah,
So,
exactly, yep, yep.
and I don't know if I told you I had an incident with an English teacher where I didn't cite something correctly, and it was like a huge deal. And I mean, luckily, it was just a
Oh
warning.
my,
It wasn't, but that scarred me. Is
I
what it
see.
did. But
Yeah,
I mean, I want to
okay.
try and do things on my own. But
Yeah,
and
we're
then
gonna build that.
okay,
The thing is with code, they always tell, even the instructors tell you this is, it's okay to use someone else's code as long as you cite it. The one thing about it is you should always, and this is what I do, is because you everyone's doing this, is like you have these pandas, right? And you have
mhm,
this matplotlib, right? Like these are modules. And in these modules, like it's developed by like someone. If you look at the documentation, you're obviously using someone else's code. What I always do is I try to look at the pandas and I try to look at the matplotlib and see if I can like use a different way. Like for example, these loops and conditionals. One thing about that though is like difficult is if you do your own like way of actually reading and then trying to like output the data, what ends up happening is it's actually less efficient if you don't use the the built-in like pandas or matplotlib. Uh, there's like so many different ways that you could probably like create the code is like different ways to skin a cat.
yeah,
But like if you don't use like the built-in one, I'm still yet to find like if because like sometimes these things can you can create the code behind the scenes of
mhm,
pandas. But the thing is to do that, you have to create loops. And once you create the loops, it's a little bit less efficient. But they figured it out how to make it more efficient. When I say efficient, like like when you actually load the code, it will take like maybe 10 seconds. Not it won't be instant like if you were to use a pandas built-in function.
okay,
But yeah, like how did you try to code this one?
okay. So I let me see. So I did the top, like I combined my data frame. I
Okay,
merged it because that's what it said to do on the instructions. So
okay,
I
good.
kind of followed the same stuff there. Um,
Yeah, this part right here is boilerplate. You
yeah,
combine it. Yep. Okay.
that was easy. And then honestly, the summary statistics, I didn't do well on. I know I didn't. I kind of copied somebody's code because I felt like I was under the gun because I was like, I got to get this in. I
I know what you
cannot
mean.
be,
It's
behind assignments.
yeah. It's what it is really like. I know it's the timeline they give you guys 1 week. Hopefully, I'm hoping that the project is gonna be more than that. Like more than 1 week because
I think
like
it is.
you
Yeah.
have to like talk about it, right? And
Hmm.
obviously like you have to know what your roles are. Coding is not something you can do overnight or like over a week. Like
No, I'm like learning that, and it's a little frustrating because it's like, okay, we're getting like 10 hours of a language that
yeah,
takes like months to learn and
yeah, you got it.
experience.
I feel like Python kind of like streamlined that a little bit. Like if you were using like other languages, it would take like times five more than if you were to use that versus like Python. But yeah. So this part, were you able to get like a summary kind of similar?
Yeah, I got something similar. Of course, it was copied, and I'm not proud of that.
Yeah. What you could
Because
do, another way, maybe like if you did, because like what I have here is just, I was just using group by. You could use aggregate. You could also use aggregate, right?
yeah, so okay, that was where it's confusing because in my study group they're like, no, supposed to use the aggregate method, and then other people are like, no, do the group by, and I did the group by
So
a
let
lot.
me show you how I did that other one because I have another version of this.
Okay.
Uh, if you take a look at, so what I have here is the group by, and I also have this is my other one where I did the aggregate. Yeah.
So can I ask what's the difference between the
But
group by and aggregate?
they're very similar. It's just like, like half a dozen and six. It's it's
Oh,
whatever you want to use that's like appropriate. I mean, sometimes there's another way, like there's so many different ways. Like Here, I'll show you what the group by looks first. This is
Okay.
kind of similar to what you guys have, right?
Yeah.
This is my long way of doing it. The shorter way is this. And then the aggregate, so here you go. This is what you're supposed to get. You need to group
Uh-huh.
them by the drug, and then
Yeah.
you have statistics within the columns. And then the aggregate is this way. So it's the same result, right?
Yeah, it's the same
Yeah,
results.
it's very much the same. The only difference is the code. And look at how shorter the code looks than this guy.
Oh, so aggregate's the way to go because it's more lean.
Yeah, and that's why people sometimes say like, oh, maybe you should do aggregate. Because
Yeah.
of that. But the thing is, like, do you understand why? Like,
No, yeah, and that's where I want to get to is like I need to understand why aggregate's the way to go opposed to group by.
Okay, so you still have to, like, for this, I kind of merge, in essence, I kind of merge the two. Like, like you still have to group them by drug regimen. The only thing is here is when you're doing the output,
Mm-hmm.
when you use aggregate, you could just like give it like a dictionary.
So you can call out, okay, so you can call out the dictionaries, the curly brackets.
Yeah, inside the aggregate, you call out the dictionary, which is kind of whatever is like the key here is this guy, right?
Yeah,
And then
that's the
whatever,
dictionary we're going to call from, and then we can use the mean, median, mode variation, standard
yeah,
deviation
yeah, it
in the
pretty much does
list.
that for you. Like this aggregate command, whatever you call out here is gonna do that for you. You don't have to like create like all these separate like your data frame dot mean, data frame dot median. Have to,
Yeah.
that's the reason
Okay.
why it's quicker. That's the reason why it's quicker.
And see, and I told you I'm of lean thought processing because it's been ingrained in me.
That's good.
Like,
I like that. If you set off, because code is really that's why people take a lifetime to I mean, in a sense, relatively a lifetime. Why they take so long to make it more efficient is because like in the beginning, when you have to like lay out like what you have, and maybe in order for it to make sense for you, you have like different statements, which can be like 100 maybe.
mm-hmm.
And then the second time you take a look at it, it's like, okay, how can I make this more efficient for the user? Because it makes sense for you as like the coder, the developer, but then for the user it may be like a lot of stuff to like take in. So but if you do it this way, it's like, oh, okay, in industry, more efficient is better. I guess in research, if you
Yeah.
can, the more you have the better. But like I would say, it's really just up to you. For me, I lean towards this guy though, like when I
You
was,
do? Okay.
yeah, with this, because I think it's just if you're used to seeing the data like laid out this way versus like, oh, okay, I don't actually have to do the dot mean for the aggregate, because you could just put in the aggregate and then inside a dictionary with like these words. Like, yeah, I mean, like this way, what I'm seeing here, what I see is like, oh, okay, it looks like I'm putting something inside tumor volume. So maybe it's just, but really the syntax is saying, go look at the tumor volume, because this aggregate is gonna do all of this. If I actually took out this guy,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna actually it's gonna do mean, median, var, sim, and then standard deviation for all of these guys. Uh, for all of these guys.
Oh, okay. So you do need to call out the tumor volume so it
You,
does.
yeah. So
Otherwise,
that
you're going to get everything for
you're
mouse
gonna
ID,
you're
time
gonna get a
point.
statistic for which doesn't make sense, right? For time
Yeah.
point, metastatic sites, all of these. It's like, oh, you don't want that. So if you put
Yeah.
in this as a key, then okay, now now you can actually see, because yeah, you gotta have to see that. You have to like discover it's like, oh, okay, that's the reason why I want to put a tumor volume there, because then it makes sense. My output makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Were you able to graph them?
Okay. So this is where I got irritated. Um, my bar chart did not work, did not work, did not work. And then finally my friend was like, I got it to work. And I was like,
Awesome.
okay. And so she sent it to me and I was like, all right, whatever, copy and paste.
Uh,
And again, not proud of it. Not proud
yeah.
of it at all.
Let's
Um,
there's we have a lot of time. We can definitely like break down I think the bread and butter here is really like, how like the pandas, right? It's like messing with a data frame.
yeah.
And then you need to really hone that. Like if you want to, I guess, do well in data science or data analytics, You need to do well in like creating this, manipulating it, flipping it over, do whatever to it. This guy, which is
Okay.
all pandas. And in the next part of that, the next part of that is this, visualizing it. Like, you need to get this to a point where you can transition to a graph. That's the
Yeah.
two things, the
Okay.
pandas and then the matplotlib or whatever module you're going to use to visualize it. And if you learn those two things, I think it's gravy. That's like the best thing about the two things in data science is knowing how to organize the data and visualize it. And everything else is just extra, like predicting,
Mm-hmm.
because like predicting is just on top of these guys. So now you have this data, now you have this graph. Let me predict the next, regimen or whatever. If this is my past data, I'm gonna use this to predict the future. You have to build the skill first, right? The past stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We can definitely cover those. I think the easiest part is probably learning the basics first.
Yeah, that's and I just want to be confident in it, like I said. Like I just want to feel confident in my basic skills. And
Yeah.
then, I know I can build from there.
Yeah. For the
And
most
just
part, like they knowing how to does we kind of we went through it. It was like I think the whole session.
yeah,
I would like to do that if we have to, but did it make sense for like the collection editing?
yeah, it did. It
Okay.
it it did make a lot of sense. I just haven't had time to practice it, but I want to go in there and practice off of yours and
Yes. Yeah.
see if I get the same results. And once I could do it on my own, I'll be like so excited and happy.
I know it's so liberating when it's like, it's kind of like the time when you can finally like, you're walking, right, or you're crawling, and then you finally run.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you just go off on.
yeah. Then that's where I want to get to that point. But it's just, like I said, I'm just having a hard time understanding grasping the basics, and I'm
Okay.
not proud of copying and pasting on homework. I'm not proud of it because that's wrong.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe it was a blessing that I couldn't open your, you couldn't open it to.
Oh
So
my. Yeah.
that was a blessing. I know it was, but eventually I will, and then I'll go back and see how I can try. Because I don't mind going back in there and trying to do the homework again and trying.
Yes. Yeah.
You
That's
know
why
what
I
I
keep
mean?
this on hand. Yeah. Let's do that. Let's cover this first, and then
Sure.
like how to put it in a function, because all of this is pretty much the pandas. So okay, let's just cover this
Okay.
first. So
Sure.
there's two types of loops in like
Okay.
Python. The first kind of loop is a while loop.
So
Uh,
it's a wild loop.
yeah, while loop and a for loop. We'll talk about the for loop next. So there's a while loop. The reason for a loop, just to like put picture into like words, is you do a loop when you're trying to repeat things many times. And a while loop works like this. So you go here, you ask yourself, is a condition true? Condition meaning like whatever you put after the loop is like a conditional statement that says like, is this variable greater than 2? Is this variable greater or less than 1? So is this condition true? If it's true, or if it's false, oh wait, hold on. If the condition true, it will go
Mm-hmm.
inside the body of the loop, and it will keep on looping. It will keep on looping,
Okay.
and then the moment that it stops is when it's false. It
And
exits.
that's when it goes out of the loop.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how a while loop works. It will always work and go inside the loop if it's true until it's false. The for loop is kind of similar, but like with this, you don't know, like the amount of time or how long that loops, how many times that loop runs for a while loop. The only thing that you can bear on is like if it's true. For a for loop, it's mostly like how many times you're gonna run it, and that's an exact number. That's explicit. But for this one, it's not. The condition is, or the question you want to ask is it true? I run it. If it's false, I exit. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Okay. So the while loop. I mean, yeah, the while loop is basically if the statement's true, it runs, and
Yes,
then it'll exit when it's false.
that's
And
it.
then
Yeah.
for the for loop, it's how many
How many times you
depending
have to
on
run it? Yeah.
depending how many times you call it, that's how many times it's gonna run.
Yeah, I'll explain that more. We'll unpack that once we get to it. It's more
Okay.
like how many times, how long your list is. That's why we talked about collections and lists, because you're gonna feed that to a for loop, and the length of that is actually the amount of times that it will run. But I'll explain that more uh, later. So okay, let's talk about like maybe an example. The first thing here is So this is like one of the applications of it. Very basic one is, why don't we like have a sequence of numbers in a descending order, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe up to like 10. It doesn't matter. So maybe like we'll put a 10 here. And the syntax of a while loop is you always put like a counter. The counter is like where you start. This is the initializer. This is where you start the counter. So I want to start at 1, and you put it outside the while loop because you want to define it. The reason why is you're gonna use this counter and you're actually gonna increase it. So once you initialize it, you put it inside the while loop right here. It becomes the statement. The reason why you do this, where you say like count is less than or equal to 10, what you're trying to define here is the limit. So let me run this on. What you're trying to do here is the very first thing, the initializer, is where you start, and then this conditional statement right here is where you end.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hold on 1 second?
Okay.
I'm on Zoom. Go away. Okay, hurry up and get out, please. Sorry, my daughter came in my room.
No worries. Maybe she wants to learn. Okay.
No, she's sorry. Go ahead.
So
Okay.
for a while loop, does this make sense? Like the while loop, you always have to initialize, and you need to define where you end, where you start, and where you end.
Okay, so the count equals 1. That's what we're starting off with.
Yeah.
And then while count is less than or greater than 10, that's 10 is going to be our end number.
Yeah, and then depending on like if you want to do it descending or increasing or like decreasing, if it's less than or equal to, because remember like this will only run if it's true, right?
Yes.
So it goes here, like the flow. The hardest part, and let me know if I'm not explaining correctly, but like, the hardest part about a loop is tracking where you are. You need to track where you are inside the loop. So in the beginning, count equals 1. And then so count goes here, it's 1 now, right?
So it's 1.
And then
okay.
And you compare it. Is 1 less than or equal to 10? Yes? True?
Yes.
Okay, so that's true. Since this is true, we talked about it being true. It's gonna go inside the body of the loop. It's gonna enter here. It's gonna run print count. And what was count? What number was count?
1.
So it prints this guy.
Okay,
then this next thing right here is the third part of the while loop, the incrementer, the incrementer. So it will increment, it will increase or decrease your counter either by 1 or decrease or whatever number you want to increase it or decrease it by. And what we're doing here is this is the syntax. You put count equals count plus 1. So now you started with count in the beginning, you started with 1, right? And then you put count here plus 1. What is count now in this line?
It's going to be 1 plus 1 plus, and then so then 1 gets printed, and then it goes for he continues on until you hit 10.
Yeah, but like just to track it, so because like I want to like try at least because when you're doing like big data, it's hard to track, but then to make more sense, you want to sample a smaller data, which is what we're doing right now. So 1 to 10. So in the beginning, count is 1. You put 1 here. It's less than 10, so it's gonna be true. You go inside the while loop. You print count, so it's 1, and you increase it by 1, right? So it's 2 now, right? So now count is 2, right?
Yeah. Okay. So count is 2, and then
it goes back to the while loop, and it checks. Okay, is 2 less than 10?
Oh, okay. So that's a true statement. So then that gets printed.
So this second guy gets printed.
Okay, and now count is 3.
And then it goes back and checks if it's less than 10.
And that is true. So then that gets printed.
And then until you get to 10, right?
Yeah, and then it stops at 10 because after 10, it's not 11. Less than 10. It's 11, and it's not less than 10. So it's false. So it exits the loop.
Yeah, and that's how you track it. That's really what it is at the bare bones. Like what is a basic while loop? That's what it is. Like that's how it works. So if you get that one, the next one.
That didn't seem so scary.
Yeah, that's like you need to understand that first, and because that's how it works, and then you build on it. You put if else statements, whatever you want in it.
Oh yeah, that's when it gets scary now.
Yeah, but then like we'll talk about that one once we get there. So the next thing, so that was increasing. You obviously can do it decreasing. The only thing that you have to change
Is go greater than or equal to.
and then you have to decrease this number, right?
Mm-hmm.
You start out with a big number, you decrease it logically. Sometimes when you don't do this logically, like you start with a big number and you make this like less than, you won't be able to like see anything because obviously this is false and nothing is printing. So you have to assess that, like why it's happening. It's probably just a sign issue, and so you have to look at that. The other thing is you can actually do this as well. Like so, while loops can be used to add a range of numbers from 1 to 10. So not only listing what the number is, like printing what it is, you can add to it. So let me try to explain this. So it's kind of similar. You start out with, because you're printing here, what you want to print is the sum of the numbers between like 1 to 10. So you initialize that first one. And then remember, the hardest part is always tracking what's happening. So you initialize the sum result as 0. This is what you want to print. You start out with 0. And then these two things that I'm defining here, these are technically like the range. So from 1 to 10, right? Okay. So I have initial number as 1, which is where I'm going to start between those two numbers. 1 and 10 is the final number.
Okay.
And then so you just plug them in. So the first one is initial num is 1, and then final num is 10. The only number that's changing here is the initial num as well as the sum result. The final number doesn't change. The final number is what we had before, which is the 10 guy. That's the limit of where you're gonna end. Okay. So you go here, the initial num is 1, and then so since 1 is less than or equal to 10, that's true. You go inside the loop, you check this equation, what is this? So yeah, the sum result is 0. So
0 equals
0 plus 1, right?
1. Yeah, okay.
So sum result now is what?
It's 1.
1. You started with 0, right?
Yeah, 0.
And then when you went inside the loop once, it's 1.
It's 1.
Okay, and then the initial num was 1 before the loop. And then now you're increasing the initial num, right? Mm-hmm. By 1 as well. So you started with 1 before the loop, and then though you went into the loop once, what is the initial num?
So 2. It's 1, and then equals 1 plus 1, so that would equal 3.
2, right? Yeah, because you have 1 here.
Okay.
So you have 1 plus 1, right?
Okay, and that's 2.
Yeah, there's two things being incremented. It's the sum result and initial num.
Okay.
The reason why you're doing that is because you're adding the number, like as you increase the range. So the one that you're adding is this initial num. But
okay.
But the sum result is the aggregate number. It's the one that you're putting all the aggregate numbers into as you move up the range. So yeah, this one is a little bit like weird, but like this is how you do it. Like you start out with 0 because you're adding 0 plus 1 plus, you put 1 inside the sum, you add 2 to it, right? You add 3 to it, you add 4 to it, you add 5 to it, right? Mm-hmm. You add 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah. So once you do that, so you go like, so initial num is 2, sum result is 1. And then so after that, what gets printed out? The sum result, right?
Yes.
So the first time you get inside the loop, sum result is 1. So that's 1. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay, now we have to go back to line 6, the beginning of the loop. So since we increased initial num, what is initial num here?
It is 1.
It's 2.
Oh, it's 2. Okay.
Yeah. Because like we went, okay, that's
1.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay, so now that it's 2, and that's still less than 10.
10, yep. So you still can go inside the loop, right? Okay.
So we could still go in the loop. So now it's 10. So it's 2.
What is the sum result? Sum result was?
It was 0.
And then 1. But now we're at 1, right?
But we're now at 1. So now it's 1 plus 2. So 3, now that's right? 3. So yes, that's less than 10. So you can go ahead and we can still go in the while loop.
Yeah, and then you just have to track that. So like why I did it as 1, and then you plus 2, plus 3, plus 4, plus 5 plus 6, right? 7, 8, 9, and 10. So that's what we did, right? We added the range of numbers from 1 to 10.
Okay.
I think one of the harder parts about this too is like I always know this is like someone can give you like to do a task like, okay, I want you guys to subtract numbers that are like even. And then like when someone says like, oh, they're even, you have to form like an equation for it before you can code it. But for this one, adding a range of numbers from 1 to 10, you have to kind of like formulate like what is this equation gonna look like? And then you have to just write it down and kind of like maybe look at this like, okay, I want this, I need a counter for the range that's gonna go up from 1 to 10. And then I need something to put that inside, which is the sum result. This is a little like, how's this? Like, does it make more sense?
Yeah, it's making sense.
Okay. The hardest part is really transitioning from like the words here into like maybe the mathematical like
Yeah.
and
yeah,
then the code.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, no,
And
because it's like I need to see the numbers, but no, the numbers are being replaced by the code.
Yeah.
And trying to translate that, and then
but
creating a code.
But if you take a look at this one made sense, right?
Yes.
So this one makes sense. It's just another extension. Like if you understand this, you can understand this somewhat.
Yeah.
You can somewhat understand it. Like you just have to like maybe convince yourself like, okay, there's this, because you need two things, right? You need two things that's gonna move up the list. And then one of them is just the tracker. It gives you like, okay, there's this guy that's gonna give me like, that's gonna increase by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever number. And if I want to add them, I need something else to put that into. That's one issue. That's one problem like that someone can give you. Maybe add like sequential numbers. And then there's this one.
The if.
So with while loops, I mean, I don't know if you guys talked about it, but like there's a continue and break. Have you guys talked about this one?
I actually don't recall that. I only know we did if-else statements, which
okay, yeah. We have an if statement here, which is what you need to have in order to do continue and break. Okay, let me just explain it. So what a continue does is, for example, what if I wanted to, like for a while loop, it will continue, obviously go until the statement is false, right? So it will continue looping until it's false. But what if I wanted to interrupt it? Sometimes maybe I don't want to print like a number 2 or a number 4 or whatever, right?
Okay.
And that's the reason why you want to put a continue or a break. Both continue and a break pretty much tells you they accomplish the same thing, but in two different ways. For a continue, you're gonna skip a number, and you're not gonna break though. You're gonna continue to the next sequence. So the goal here in my thing is I want to print out numbers between like 8 to 0.
But we're gonna skip 2.
But you're gonna skip 2. So
okay.
And still continue though. Like when you reach 2, you still want to continue to the
next. And it's just not gonna print the 2.
It's not gonna print the 2. For the break one, obviously, what do you think that means? It's gonna break. So after you reach 2, it doesn't continue.
Oh, it doesn't continue. Oh, okay. I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why Python is nice. In other languages, it's not as easy as this. But okay, so you can definitely read it that way, yeah.
Yeah, break. So break would just be like it just stops.
It just stops. It doesn't continue because you want your goal or whatever is to print numbers from 8 to 0. If you put continue, it's gonna skip that number and continue to the next number. If you put break, once you reach that number, it's gonna break and it won't print anything else afterwards.
Okay, and it stops it in. Okay, I get that. And I'm sorry, can you remind me, because I'm ignorant, of the 2 equal signs? What is the 2 equal signs? We're calling that out specific number or element, right?
When you're doing this 2 equal sign, so 1 equal sign is an assignment. 2 equal sign is a comparison.
Okay.
So for example, I'm comparing count to 2. So I'm checking if count is 2. Is it? That's what I want to do. For 1 equal sign, I'm trying to assign, whatever's on the right to the left. So like the output of like one equal sign here, maybe we'll let me put that right here. So like, what if I had this guy, right? A equals 2 plus 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then let me print out like A. So this is just an operator or an assigner. So what you put on the right, it assigns it to a variable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So A is now 4.
Gotcha.
So the output of this, if you put one equal sign, is gonna be a number or a string. You know, maybe
Okay.
maybe we could put like a string, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
But if you put two equal sign, and then you put in like, for example, let's compare two things. Let's make a, all right, let's make A1, and then let's make a B1, and then let me see if A. So to compare these, so 1 is assigned to A, so A is 1 now, right?
Mm-hmm.
B 1 is assigned to B, so B is 1 now, right? And then when you do two equal sign, you're trying to compare A and B, right?
Yeah.
So when you're comparing, the output of it isn't a number or a string. It's a Boolean. It's either true or false.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I know Boolean is.
So let me compare that one. So if is A equals B, does A equal B in this case? Are they both 1?
Yes, they do, because they're both 1. So that's a true statement. So it's going to come out true.
Yeah.
Oh, and it came out true. Okay.
If you put in as 2,
That's false.
it's false, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
But if you output A, it's gonna be a number.
Oh, okay.
And if you output B, it's gonna be a number. But if you output the two equal sign, it's gonna be a Boolean. Yeah, you have to track that. That's how you. Okay, it's like, oh, that's what that is.
Gotcha.
And then another one with the comparison one is like, is it greater than? Is it less than? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can even have not. You can have like not equal to. So not equal to would be like a exclamation point and equal sign.
Oh, okay.
So like, for example, does A not equal B?
No, it doesn't.
So it's true, right?
Yeah. Okay. No, that's true, because yeah, they don't equal each other.
And then like if they are equal and you put not equal, it's gonna be false.
It'd be
That one's a
false.
little weird. It's like the
Yeah.
double negative.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I don't usually use the not equal to. I usually just use equal to and all the other ones. Okay, so
Okay. Gotcha.
so for this one, so you understand that one. So
Yes.
so like just going over the loop again. So it starts out with 10, right? 10,
Mm-hmm.
and then when it's true, 10 is greater than 0, right?
Yeah.
So you go in there and then you minus 2, it becomes 8.
8.
And then it checks first, is 8 equal to? It doesn't, right?
No. So it goes back and goes into the loop.
Yeah, and then so it skips that and it goes to print. It's gonna print 8.
Okay.
And then it keeps on doing that until you reach 2. So now count is
8.
2.
Uh-huh.
And then so when count equals 2, it's gonna continue. It's not gonna print anything. It's gonna continue to the top. When I mean continue, I meant like continue back here.
Yeah. Okay. It's gonna continue going on to the loop.
Yeah, it's gonna continue but not print.
Oh, okay.
And then so that one makes sense. And then for the break one, same sequence, but once I reach 2, it's not gonna continue. It's gonna get out of the loop.
It's gonna get out of the loop, stop the loop completely.
Yeah, and it's not gonna print anything. Yeah.
Okay. No, I get the difference between continue and break.
Yeah, and the while loop, right? The while loop is the one that's
yes.
Yeah. The while, and then a while loop is also used for, let me see. This one's kind of like the break as well. Oh yeah, you've heard of like the if else statement, right? The if
yes,
statement.
and those are scary.
Yeah, I think that one we're gonna combine them with this.
Okay.
A lot of these is learning each particular like concept or structure.
Yeah.
And then kind of like combining it. Once you combine it, then you use it for like making programs. But so with this one, if there's an if else statement, there's also a while else statement. There's actually a while else statement. So this is very similar to an if else statement. Like if you remember, so the while loop, it will do it every time it's true until it's false, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if the question to ask here is, what if I want to print something else after that? Like after you reach like 1, or like after you reach 0 in this case. Once you reach 0, it's gonna exit, right?
It's gonna exit the loop, yeah.
It's gonna exit, but then what if I wanted to print something afterwards?
Oh, okay.
Like, so if this is if this is false, or if this is true, print this. Once it's false, go to else. So if this
Okay,
is
so
true, print it. Once it's false, it's the same with the if else statement, right?
uh-huh. So
You keep on doing if it's true, and if it's false, then you go to else, right? Or else if. You go else if. If that's like true, you print whatever is in there. If it's false, you go to else. If nothing else works.
okay, so going through the while loop, and then once it ends, and when it's no longer true, when it's starting to become false now, then you go to the else statement, and then it
That's
prints
it.
whatever you tell it to print on the
Yeah.
else statement. Okay.
Whatever's after it, it does it. And in this
Yeah.
case, I'm printing it. But it's the same as the if else, right? True until false, you go to else.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's I mean, there's time, and this is very basic what I'm doing here, but there you can definitely extend this one, put like codes that matter. And this next one right here is repeated strings. So that, we talked about numbers, printing numbers. You could also extend this to strings, right? You guys have done concatenation. So
Oh yeah.
concatenation, this is where you combine like variables with strings and strings and strings. So, like this will communicate to someone like, maybe like, oh, 0 is less than 5. If you didn't have a while loop, you're gonna have to print this one by one, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, yeah, we're gonna want a while loop on this because it'll automatically do it all for us.
Yeah. So anytime there's a sequence, you have to do like a loop. A while loop does for me actually in preference, like I really don't like while loops that much because you come into contact with infinite loops because you don't know how when it ends, right? You don't know how much times you're gonna run it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually a limitation with a while loop because like, what if you don't know where it ends and then it doesn't end? What if it doesn't end?
Yeah, that he did say it'll go continue, and then your computer crashes.
Yeah, and that's when you go here and then like boom.
Yeah.
So, but with a for loop, you know when it ends. You have a finite ending.
Uh-huh.
And so that's why I like for loops, and you can see why. So you're pretty much gonna you can do everything with a for loop, same with a while loop. So like for while loops, there are times you will use it, and the only time you will use it is if you don't know that ending. If you don't know how many times you have to run it.
And that's when you use the for loop.
That's when you know if you have a finite ending, you use a for loop. If you have like an infinite ending, you don't know. You're trying to reach a value where you're trying to compare two things, and you don't know how long it takes to get there. You use a while loop.
Okay.
But if you know how long you have to run or how long you have to like loop it, that's a for loop.
Okay.
Okay, so that's that with strings and numbers. And then what about a list? So why don't we use a list, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm trying to do here is kind of like what you would do for a for loop. So a for loop, you use a list, and you do kind of like what I'm doing in the syntax, where what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to remove this cat. Like, so this is my initial collection,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
there's like a bunch of cats here.
Okay, I see.
And then I want to remove them one by one.
Mm-hmm.
And then like another thing is in Python, things are not hard, but you have to be careful about your indentations. So like you see here, this guy was red, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's green.
Okay, so green. It's just like the signals. I mean, the street signals. Green means go. Red means no.
Yeah. So like
okay.
if you green is good, yeah, and then red is bad. But it really depends. Let me explain. Like if it's red, it's not always the case that it's bad. The one thing here, I'll show you the difference. So right now, this is indented the same way as like all my other ones right here. So if I print this, it's gonna print each time I run a loop. It's gonna print whatever I have each time I run it, right?
Okay.
If I put it in the same, or I don't indent it, but in the same line as my while keyword, it's only gonna print the last thing. It's only gonna print the last thing.
Oh.
Yeah. And
so
then
then it's not doing a loop then.
It will do the loop, you just don't see it. You're not printing it. You're only seeing the final destination. You're not seeing the journey.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And then for oftentimes when you're debugging or you're creating the code, you like to see what's happening, right?
Yes, because
you like to see what's happening so that you can confirm if it works.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, even though if it's red, I always like doing it this way. So that
Yeah.
like I know that it's removing cat every single time, so there's no more cat. So for this one, I would just say like a rule of thumb would be just line up if you want if you want to see what's happening inside the loop, just line up your commands to the condition. This is the condition of the loop.
Okay, so okay, I see.
Line them up. If you don't want to, for a user doesn't really care what happens inside the loop. They just want to care about if it works.
Yeah, the final.
Then you do that.
Okay, which is usually a lot of managers.
Exactly. That's why I know your audience,
Yeah, if it's a manager, just give them the final product. That's all they care about. If it's president or CEO, just give them the final product.
Yeah.
If it's amongst your peers, go ahead and give them all the details.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. So like for that, in terms of like also like when you're creating an app or code, it's also like that. Like the consumer themselves, that they like to see the final product. For like everyone, like the debuggers, yeah, they like to see this board when it's like laid out. Okay. Same with this, very similar. Well, I'm just using what we already know, right? Pop, remove, right?
Yes.
Like, so all those things that we've learned, you pretty much can put them inside loops. Everything you've learned, everything. Like,
Okay, in the pop, it's where we have to call out not the variable,
index,
the index. No, yeah.
and it's negative, so it's gonna pop out the end, right? So the first one is right. What's the first thing that gets popped? The cat.
The cat.
And then the next thing gets ran. The rabbit gets popped. And then the next thing is the cat, right? It makes sense. It's going this way.
Yeah, it's going right to left.
Until it's empty. Once it's empty, you can't really remove anything, right?
So it closes. It's just an empty bracket.
Yeah, and then like from that, I think this, since it's empty, that's the reason why there's no error here, which is good. Because once it's empty, then I think it just exit because it's false. Apparently, it's false. Yeah. You always want to put whatever you put in here is something with a conditional that gives you like a true or false. Like true or false. Whatever you put inside the condition is always like a comparison that gives you either a true or false output, like a Boolean. And okay, and then you can even do this.
Oh.
Yeah, there's like so much things you can do with this actually. Like Minesweeper, I think they use they use a while loop for that.
Oh my God! Seriously?
I mean, think about it. Like Snake, all those games, they're really like fundamental games that doesn't have that much graphics. Yeah, because you have to create it like this. You have to, and the guys that move, you have to obviously define the physics of how they move.
Oh my gosh! If I could figure all this out, I could actually play the game now.
Right? And you can, and that's the greatest thing about this, because then you can really, it gives you a better resolution of like not just this, but like how to make like different apps. The cell phone, everything. How do these apps work? Once you see the underlying like code that comes with it. I'm not gonna really explain this. This is a really like, if you look at this, it's doing a nested while loop.
Okay, so what's nested while loop?
Nested while loop is kind of like similar as nested if statement. Like you put them together inside. You put like a double. It's like a double. You could even do a triple as well.
Oh wait, so a nested loop is a nested while loop is a loop inside a loop, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I do remember that. That was.
And then like if you look at this is kind of difficult to explain, but what's happening here is I'm printing the star. One of these while loops is printing it horizontally. And then the other one is printing it vertically. And you just have to test it. You have two options. Either you want a star or you want a space. That's what you're printing, either a star or a space.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
So the beginning one, you start out with this guy, right? The count 10. And then count two right here is like what you're actually like initializing. You start out with 10, and then you decrease it. The count 2 gets decreased until you get like 1. And then after you get 1, and then you're comparing them, and this is false, it exits, and then right here it also exits. You just have to track it. A lot of times, if you understand like the basic like non-nested loop, I think that's good enough for now.
Okay.
The nested one, once it's nested, it takes time, because then like for me right now, you see this, it works, but what it is really is or when you see someone someone's code work, it took them a while to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like experimentation. You're gonna get
Okay.
hands on and then like check. That's why you want to print what's happening each time because you want to check if it works.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's while loop. Let's move on to actually no, there's another one. Actually, yeah, let's look at this one. So this one you could actually have you guys heard of like input?
Yes, I was just gonna say that looks like an input.
Yeah, like if you run this on, like maybe you want a name. Okay, so it gives you this guy and then this one and then this. So it does that, right? Like
Yeah.
so if you do like an input, you can put that inside a while loop along with any command that you want. And one of the nicest things about this is, what if you did like, what if you put no here? See, it gives you two things, right?
Okay.
So do you know about? I mean, everyone knows about it. Like when you have to create a password or log into like some, Facebook or whatever, right? Like at work, and then like it boosts it boots you out if you put in the wrong password, right?
Yeah.
Or so it's that in that regard, like the whole structure of getting booted out, and then if you put in the right password, you can log in successfully. That's a while loop. That's like a for loop.
No.
Yeah, I'm serious.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, I have to laugh. Okay.
Yeah, that right there. That gets programmed in every time you log in Facebook and or anything Instagram.
Anything.
Yeah, it's a while loop.
It's a while loop. Oh my god,
Yeah,
that's hilarious. I need to write that down.
And obviously it's a while and if else statement. Yeah, you have to check, right, what the input is. So it's a while if else statement combination.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
Yeah, it's like you can see like, oh yeah, wow, like all these things does have its even though it's so basic, and then once you finally connect the dots and then create like the data frames, whatever, all that. And yeah, like even what was it called? Your thermostat. Like you know how like it learns like your temperatures.
Yeah. Oh
this,
my
this
gosh.
this is kind of advanced, but like that's called machine learning. Like so the AI, the whole thing, the whole point about AI is it takes the past things that the user uses or inputs, and then like it'll use all those different inputs in the past, and then like the computer learns what you did in the past, and it'll predict what you want next week, tomorrow, next month.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's something like the GitHub.
It is like that. Yeah, it's exactly like that. Like all of that has this while loop has that application, and then other applications like if else statements. Actually, like printing out like columns and rows. You could use a while loop for that as well, or a for loop. The one reason why you wouldn't use a for loop or a while loop for printing out different rows is it just takes too long. If you have a big data like 18,000 rows, it would take forever versus like just using like pandas. Okay, so this is a for loop right here. So let me explain it now that we're on this. So if you remember, the while loop is it will run it for as long as it's true, and then once it's false, it exits, right? Okay, it's the opposite for this guy. So for the for loop, the condition it's gonna ask this question. This is a question for the for loop. Is this, so remember you have to feed this a sequence or like a collection, a list. It will run through the list and it's going to ask, is this the last element or item in the sequence in the list? If it's false, it's going to run it. And it keeps on running it until first zero index, first index, second index, third index, until maybe you have a 5 length of a sequence. And then once you're in the last one, once it's true, is this the last item? It's going to exit. And so it runs it if it's false. And if it's true, it exits. And the question is this the last item of that sequence or the list?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so this is very opposite of the while loop then.
Yeah, it is. It is. In a way it is. But then you'll see that it's a different structure. You know how like the while loop, you put in a condition, right?
It has to call for a true or false statement, yeah.
Yeah, but for this one, you put in it's still a comparison. But then it's not a comparison. It's a membership. So let me explain it more here. So right here is like a way for, if you remember, for a while that we also did the same thing, right? We printed a few numbers.
Yeah.
For a for loop, you could do the same thing. To explain the syntax first, so what you put in front of the for loop is not a comparison, it's a membership. So this in is a membership. So what happens here is, for this one, I'll explain what the range is first. So a range is pretty much the same thing as, like, if you were to create a list, but then in a more succinct way. If you were to do this run, like if it was a list, I could have just done like 10, 9, 8, right?
Yeah, you could have counted all the way
Yeah,
down.
same thing, right?
Uh-huh.
But a range, what you put as the first number is where you start.
Mm-hmm.
What you put the second number is where you end.
Yes.
But then not including that one, you're not including the last number.
No.
Yeah, you only include. It's kind of similar to the data frames. Like
Yeah, I
the
was gonna say that this is something that I recall. Yeah.
yeah, it's same as the data frames. You always include like the initial, but you don't include the final. And then the third number,
How many between?
you have in between. And if it's negative, it's gonna obviously decrease it. And obviously, like if this is like not a negative, you can't do it, right? Because it's gonna try to increase it, but then this final number is a zero.
Zero, so it's not gonna be able
Nothing
to
gets
work.
printed. Nothing gets printed. So logically, you have to put a number, a negative number. If you did like 0 to 10,
Then that would be positive. It'd be 1. Okay.
yeah. And you can see that if you wanted to test it, just change this to 0 and 10, make this 1, and then there you go.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, it's really simple. Like if you look at it, you can also test these other ones. How you do that is just uncomment them and then
Mm-hmm.
just do this, you know. So let me explain that. So that part, that's range. Now let me explain what's happening inside this count in range. So maybe it's easier to see when there's like 3 numbers. Oh, whoops. This guy is not commented out. Okay. So now you understand what range is. It's pretty much just a list, but a shorter
Yeah.
way.
It's not all the numbers typed out. It's just
Yeah.
it's the range, calling out all the numbers in that range. Got it.
And then so whatever you put in here is a list or a range. And then what it's doing here is it's gonna transfer, like you start with 0, right? And then 1, 2, 3. It's gonna transfer 0 first to count. So
Okay.
the first time it runs, it's gonna transfer 0, this guy right here, to count.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes inside the loop. And then what was the question? Well, the question is this the last item in the sequence? Is 0 the
No.
last item in the sequence? No, right?
No. So it
if it's
keeps going.
false, it's gonna enter the loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it enters the loop, and you transfer 0 to count, and then what do you get? What gets printed out? 0.
0.
And then now let me go back to the loop. It's just a 2-liner. It's pretty simple. And then now I'm gonna transfer 1. You're going to the next element. So 1. It's not 0 anymore. It's 1.
Mm-hmm.
1 gets transferred to count. That's why it's a count. And then you ask the question: is this the last item in the list?
No, it's not.
So it's false. It enters the loop. It prints.
And you print 1.
1. Keeps on doing that until you get to like 10, right?
Uh-huh.
Or like 9 gets printed, but 10 is the last item, right?
Yeah, so it doesn't get printed.
It doesn't get printed because it is the last item.
True. Yeah, it's the last item, so it's true.
Does that make more sense now?
Yeah.
If you break it down to like, that's why I like these pictograms. It's like, oh, okay, that's the difference, and that's what.
No, I like that pictogram. It really.
That's why I added this here because I saw sometimes like people didn't really understand that flow because I'll be talking about it, right? But then I always start with this. It's like, oh, okay, that's the question you asked. There's a switch going on here, and that's why it's a loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then for this one, like just stepping back, like obviously you know how long you have to run it, and that length of time is, or how many times you run it is this guy, right?
Yeah.
And there's a finite like length of how many times you run it. With the while loop, there isn't one. You just keep on running until there's a condition here that tells you not to run it. In this case, it's a membership. The membership tells you, are you at the last element? And if it is, then it still tells you that like, it is last element. It's still kind of comparing that. But in a way, this is how you do it. And then the other one is just comparing 2 values. And this is like if you compare it to the while loop, this is also more succinct, right? The nothing needs to get defined beforehand, right? Like the count is actually inside the loop. For the while loop, if you remember the while loop, let me look back at that one. You had to define the counter first, right?
Yeah. Okay. The
But
count's
then,
inside on the for loop. The count's inside the for loop,
yeah,
and then the
because you're
while
not,
loop you have to define it.
yeah,
Okay.
because this counter probably like the but you can understand it now is
Yes.
this count gets changed automatically. You don't have to put in an incrementer, right? You don't have to initialize it. You don't have to put like count equals count plus 1 or minus 1. You don't have to do that
No. It's.
because it overwrites it. Like every time you run it, it moves through the list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so that's
Like
the mechanic.
I'm getting
that's
kind of somewhere finally.
okay. That's the mechanics of it, because like that right there needs to be it needs to be ingrained. Like, oh, for and while loops, this is what's happening, because all of this is pretty much the same thing as how they programmed the pandas. When they did the group by.
Mm-hmm.
Group by is just checking like, is this part of that group, right? If it's not, I'm not gonna group it. It's doing it so fast because it's just one word. It's like
Yeah.
one group by, and it's even like what else? Aggregate, like mean, all these words mean something, but all of it is like a combination of for loops, if else statements, definition of variables, mathematics, stuff like that. But the main thing is like the understanding like what's behind it, because I think that's like a little bit, sometimes everyone doesn't really go over that, but let's try to actually see if there's one here that's good to. Oh yeah, when you finally, oh, okay, I guess we can look at this one. This one's kind of similar.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could put in whatever conditions you have inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have like the range. Again, we know that now the counter gets overwritten every time you go to the range. And then this just checks, okay, what if I wanted to print different things depending on how much this counter increases? So as long as this counter is less than this guy, print this. If it's between this, print this. If it's greater than, print this guy. So like there's so much flexibility with it, right?
Okay.
Yeah, like you can do so much with this. And then now that was with a range, let's see if I have one for like an actual list. And there's even one here with like a for else. And this is actually the password one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's actually the password one. So like with an input, what if I wanted to, oh, that's incorrect. See, it's incorrect, but it's still wanting me to put something, right?
Uh-huh.
And look, let me put the password. It's done.
Oh, okay, nice.
It's the same thing.
And you did an input on these too. Okay, I see.
Yeah. You could do that if else break, whatever. And then I wanted to go to the one where like, where it is, oh, here you go. Here's the one with the list, an actual list.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is like the application that you want it to do for like data frames, is like to work on a list. So besides the range, what if we create a list, an actual list? And so I just put that here. This is the sequence. The sequence is gonna, for each element, it's gonna overwrite counter. It's gonna be apple first and orange and mango.
Until we hit melon. Okay.
And then now it makes sense why it's printing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For the most part, like once you understand it, you can technically just anticipate what the final result is once you understand the loop. And then so with this same thing, but then now I'm concatenating, right? I'm doing stuff
Yes.
yeah. So you could extend it to not just the word itself, but like a bunch of other words. And then maybe I want to like I start with like an integer list, and then I want to like add things to this before I print it. So you could just print +10, and then you could even do more. What if, let me see, there's this one that I wanted to do. Oh, okay. So what if you wanted to append two lists, and then like, so I create like an empty list, and then like I have a list itself. So the list I created is like 1 to 10, and then the empty list is empty, and then I wanna review all the elements of this list, of this sequence. I'm gonna look at it, and then it's gonna go inside count. So count's gonna be 1, and then it's gonna sequentially go to 10. But the first one is gonna be like every time it goes to count, it's gonna times it by 2.
Okay, and that's when you would append. Okay.
And then it appends this guy, it appends this guy, it appends this guy. But does that make sense? Like, what if I wanted to create a list that will take my original list and then times it by 2? This is how you do it.
You would append it and then do count times 2. Okay.
Yeah. Because whatever you append here is what the number is. It could be anything.
And that's your new list. Your appended list.
And then so now we can even extend that. What if not timesing it by 2, but like what if the question asks you, I want you guys to give me a list that takes an old list, but the criteria is I want the new list to be divisible by 2 or even. I want it to be even numbers. So before we times it by 2, but now what does this mean? Like I want it to be even. How can I assess if it's even? So I just created a random list here. And then I want the new list to be empty because then we're gonna check list 1. So again, like the counter here is gonna attain like each one of these sequentially. And then if you think about it, in order for me to create a new list with only even numbers, you're gonna need an if statement, right? You're gonna do because you have to filter it, right? You have to filter it. Like this list 2 is technically filtering my list 1. This is kind of like data framing. You're filtering or cleaning a list. There's going to be a for loop there maybe, and then there's an if statement there every time you're filtering something from a data frame or a list. And then if I want it to be divisible by 2 or even, you have to do this thing. Have you seen this before, the percentage sign and 2 divided by 2 or whatever this thing is?
I don't recall it, but no.
Okay. So what this is this is called a modulo. So just to test some of these, a modulo, once you do like 2 modulo 2, it will divide it. And do you remember the term remainder?
Yes.
Okay, I know it's been a long time, but like that's like the very first thing I think. So like you remember when you divide something and if it goes to it all, there's no remainder, right?
Yeah. So if there's a remainder, then it's going to be false.
It's going to be 0.
0, yeah.
There's no remainder. But what if I divide it by, what if it's like 3 divided by 2? How much remainder? How many remainder do I have?
You're going to have a remainder.
1, right?
1, yeah. I was like, hold on. I'm trying to go into long division here. 1, yeah.
Yep, yeah, no, it's long. So 4 divided by 2, is that good?
2. Yeah, that's good. It's 2 because
0, right? Yeah. The modulo is going to give you the remainder. If it can take as much of that number, it's going to be 0. If it gives you a decimal or it gives you a remainder, it will output the remainder. So what's the remainder for 5 divided by 2?
I don't remember. Let me do.
Okay. I know it's like one of those.
Yeah, I'm like 5 divided by. Oh my god, my pen's not working. 5 divided by 2. So that's 2, 4, 1. Oh, it's remainder 1. 2 remainder 1.
Okay, so let's see if it is. That's the one. Yeah, if you think about it, this like modulo. So this is called modulo. The percentage sign like this is called modulo or modulus. If I do this number, kind of similar to what I did here, count divided by 2, it should give me the remainder. If there's no remainder, what does that mean? If I divide it by 2, it means it's even, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is how you interpret this. If I have a modulo of a count that's equal 0, that means it's even. So this is checking if what my number here is even. That's what we want, right? Like as count attains all these different values, my if statement is going to check count if it's even.
And if it's even, it gets printed.
Yes. Oh no.
Okay.
If it's even, it's gonna get appended to the list first.
I mean, yeah, it gets
appended to the list.
Because that's the new list.
Yeah. If we wanted to, we could have put it right. I think it's like right here, right there. So if you put it right there, you can see what's happening. And then if you put it like right here, you're gonna just see the ending, which in this case, I guess that's what I wanted. So the ending would be this guy. And then like
Okay.
obviously you take a look at this, it's correct, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
all these other ones are odd.
Yes.
Yeah. And another way would be maybe like positive or negative. There's like with these guys, the divisible by 2, you can use this in like if you're checking different data frames. If if they're not 0, what if they're not 0, or what if they are 0? There's so many scenarios that can be the case. And then for like positive or negative, you could do the same thing. And let me just cover, let me see. And then also this guy, you could even do this. So very similar, right, to the while loop?
Yeah, that was the while loop up there. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, like this, you can do this, and then you can change it to numbers. And then this right here is like for that while loop though, and this is for the for loop. So you see like both of these can have the same capacity or like same ending. You can pretty much do one and also the other. You can do it. The only difference is like you really have to like just know how the flow of the loops are. And we kind of explained that. Does it make sense though? The for loops and while loops.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense.
Okay, that's good. And then
it's not as scary now.
That's good. I mean, it's progress, step by step.
Yeah, it's progress. It's not as scary now. I feel a little bit more comfortable now if I have to do a for loop or while loop now, which I'm not as intimidated by it anymore.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, because you also do like besides like when you apply it, I think this is one of the other cases. So now that you know loops, and then you've seen them being combined with conditionals, let's try to do functions. Let's try to create some functions. And then,
okay.
So these loops are just one data structure. Conditionals is another data structure, and then the higher hierarchy of it is like because like these are kind of just like out there, and then they're not very structured. Once you put them in a program, you can create a function, and once you create like you have a bunch of functions, this is how you create a module. When you put functions and there's another one called classes, which I'll talk about next time, is these functions and classes you put them inside a module, and that's how you create a panda. That's how you create pandas. That's how you create NumPy, MatPlotLib. Is you create these individual functions, right? Like these individual functions are created within each package that someone developed, and then someone had to probably create like a function to do the aggregate, right? Someone had to create a function that does the group by or read CSV, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. Someone had to create that, and those are called functions. And then another word for function is method. So you've seen this before when you have like something dot something, right? Something dot something. Yeah. When you put dot something, that's just called a method, but it's really a function. It just does something. It doesn't really output anything. It just does something. But essentially it's called a function. Once we talk about classes, you're going to see that a method is a function. It's the name of a function within a class. But right now, let's just limit ourselves to functions. What is a function?
Yeah.
Like, let's just define bare bones. What is a function? So the function is anything that you can create a program, a small program. You have all these like conditionals and mathematical operations, and then if you remember functions, it has to have an input and an output, right? What you feed it is called the input, and what you get out of it is the output. And this is what you call right here, an input and output. An input usually goes, and this is how you define a function, is you have the function name, which is this blue thing right here. And then you create this def.
Okay, defining.
So def is like how you initialize it. I want to create a function. You put def. And then what you put after it's going to turn blue. What you put after it is the name of the function. Okay, and then what you put inside, you put the parentheses after the name of the function. What you put inside those parentheses, we'll cover this again because this is like one of those like big things that people talk about. So like what's inside the parentheses is the input, are the inputs. Sometimes it's only one. So maybe it's an input of the function. So what you put inside are the inputs of your function. Inputs meaning what you have to feed it. Like what if I want like this function to add like a plus b, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you put a and b here,
Okay.
and then like this function can be called adding numbers.
That's okay.
It's very simple. Like you could create a function adding numbers. Someone already created that. So you
Uh-huh.
feed a and b, and then like those a and b can be one and one. And then inside the function, inside your function, and whatever you put after this def, whatever, all these guys right here, this is the body of the function. So after you inputted a and b, which can be one, both one, inside you put a plus b. That's the body of the function, a plus b.
Okay.
And then what about the output? So this function is called adding numbers, right?
Uh-huh.
You put the output after the return. So this is the third part. You have the input and how you define it. You have the body where you put all your mathematical, everything you've learned, if else statements, loops, there's a loop here, obviously.
Yeah.
A mathematical operation, you put it inside this guy. And then the third part is now I've done, now I've taken all the inputs. Now I've done all the operations. I want to give my user an output. So you just you just type return and you put the output in here. Does that make sense?
A little lost, but I know there's more to it. So
There's more to it. That's like
okay.
touching the
Okay.
surface. That's like definitions. The
Okay. So
three parts of a function is definitions. The,
okay.
the input, the body, and
Body,
then
and then there's the output.
yeah.
Okay.
That's just concept. Now let's actually talk about how that can be. Like, what can we do with that? I think the examples kind of like explain itself. So, for example, what if I wanted to greet someone?
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a good, and we'll talk about the math after. Um, what if I wanted to greet someone, and then so this function I just put def, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like so the name of this function I call it greet because I want it to greet this person.
Yeah.
And then so what I put inside here is the person I want to greet. This other part, let's ignore this for now. This is just a default.
Mm-hmm.
So like what if I don't want to put in like this guy right here? It's just gonna default. So what if I put in like here, I define this guy, and the example is down here. So the input, so whatever you put in here is like a dummy variable. It's like because you're defining it in generality. Like you're gonna put name here, right?
Okay.
But you're only defining it. You don't actually have to put it in a specific name. Once you define it, you put in a specific name. Does that make sense? You put in a so like what you're defining something here. What you're actually defining is a variable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Once you use it, because you have to define it first before you use it. You have to define it first. So you have to talk about like you have to what you're actually defining here is not the specific variable that you're not saying this is one, right? What you're gonna put here maybe for example, maybe I'll put something like this here. So df add num and maybe a and b, right? Maybe this is an easier example, and then it's doing this, and then like or c equals this guy, and then my return would be like C. Let's see if this one works. Oh yeah, you make sure you put in the colon. So just to explain this, what if I put add num and one and one, one and one? Okay, I think this is an easier example, right? Because like this one, I mean, like if you don't like numbers, I just wanted to explain something practical.
No, it's fine. I get what you're trying to do.
Okay, so like so this one add num, right? Is
Uh-huh.
what I just so that's the name of the function. You have to initialize
Okay.
it with def because that's when you
Uh-huh.
know that you're trying to create a function. Df is like short for definition. So
Definition. Yeah, that's what I figured.
the def and then add num is the name. Whatever you put inside the parentheses is the dummy variable. It's like the general variable that's gonna take in whatever you're gonna put inside. You don't have to be specific when you're doing the function itself, function definition. You have to, this could have been like another number, or another variable, X and Y. The only thing that you have to make sure is you have to change what's inside.
Inside the body.
Yeah, because it has to
Okay.
match. Whatever
Yeah.
you put in here,
The body
have
and
to-
input have to,
Yeah.
not the input. Yeah, the input and the body need a match.
yeah, because like
Okay.
in the background, what's happening is, you define this and then now you're using it. And then you're actually putting like, 1 here, right? And 1 here, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're actually assigning 1 to A and then 1 to B. That's what's happening here.
Gotcha. Okay.
Whatever you put here, you're assigning 1 to A and then or 1 to B. And then now you're not seeing it, but the 1 plus the A plus B is being done, it's being operated.
Mm-hmm.
And then it assigns it to this local variable, this C. And then this C, that's the math, that's the body. Now we want it to output something, so we put return. And then it returns C, which is whatever this is. And this is the number, right?
And that's what it prints out too.
Yeah,
Okay.
we expected that one. So this is like probably the simplest one. Now looking at this, does this one kind of make sense? Like it's greeting someone, kind of like adding them. What you put in here is a dummy variable that's gonna take in whatever I put inside.
Yeah.
It's gonna assign it to that. And then, oh yeah, maybe I didn't explain this part. This part right here, when I put like triple apostrophes.
Yeah, what is that?
This is called a doc string, a documentation string.
Okay.
So you know how like did I show you that thing where like you can actually use help to query a function?
Yes, you did.
Okay, so I did tell you that. So when people create their functions, they usually put a doc string, and then what a doc string does is it is what it is. It gives you a documentation string to explain what the function does. And then we saw that for a few of them, like was it help print, right? Is like this guy. We saw this guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here, print is the same as greet. It's just a function, right?
Yeah.
So what if I replace print with greet? It does the same thing. Look, what it outputs is whatever I just defined up here.
Yeah. Okay.
So what you're trying to create now is like, what if you were in the hands of like the guy behind the scenes? Like like what if you were the guy who created like the function in Pandas?
Mm-hmm.
And then for the most part, that's why I always teach it like learn what the Pandas and the MatPlotLib modules are, know what the functions is inside them, and then try to customize it, create your own. Try see if you can create a function that's similar to what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish, and see if the output is the same. Because in essence, it is what it is. Someone just created a bunch of functions, they put it inside a module and packaged it. They called it Pandas. They call it MatPlotLib. Like it's just a bunch of these, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then
so it's just with Pandas, we just got to learn what all the functions are, and that's where you can go in there and manipulate.
Yeah.
So you get what you need.
And then using those functions, it's faster because someone actually created each individual function, and they added like a bunch of advanced level stuff. Because like right now we're just learning it, right?
Yeah.
And then like if you ever go, I don't know, those guys that get like high level stuff in this, they actually create things and put it inside their code to make it more efficient and faster. And that's why it's faster. If you ever use a loop versus like a data frame function, it's actually less efficient to just do a loop. It's as I said, because like the coders, they've implemented those efficient like algorithms. Yeah, but oftentimes, yeah. So this is what it is. When you create like a function, this is the doc string. There's an input, and then there's the body of the code. Or here, there's a body of the code, and then sometimes you could either use return or print. It doesn't really matter. It's the same thing. Okay. You can either use return or print. Okay, so moving on, let's look at something useful, which is, let's see, maybe this guy. Let's see, numbers. Oh, here, maybe not this one. Factorial. Oh, here you go. Maybe there's something useful. Have you heard of body mass index?
Yeah, the BMI for height
BMI.
and weight. Yeah.
Yep, yeah. So this is the one I always default to because like there's this other ones, factorial Fibonacci. Like let's not talk about this because what I'm trying to do here is what I'm trying to because like now I've explained to you the how to define a function. What if we actually create one for ourselves? Because I don't think there's one for body mass index. Maybe there is,
Huh.
but you know the equation for that, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's your height and then you times it by your weight, or actually,
something
I
like
don't
that.
really know, or divide it.
Yeah, you could just look it up, but this
Yeah.
this is what this is. But like, there's no built-in, or it could be anything. Maybe there is one, but like maybe there's something out there because no one has like programmed every equation out there, right? Or every
Hmm.
algorithm. But you don't have to fear because you could just do it on your own. You could just create your own function.
Yeah.
That will make life easy for you. And it's the same with a loop. Like a loop will make life easy for you by typing 2 lines of code versus like 100.
Yeah.
This the same with a function. How you kind of interpret what a function is, like, and then the application and like the advantages of it is you as like a developer or a coder is you're seeing everything right now. You're seeing what's inside this guy, right?
Hmm.
You're seeing what you're outputting. You're seeing what you're inputting. But if you give this to someone, a user, a consumer, they won't be able to see this, like an iPhone, right? Or like an
No.
app. They won't be able to see what's behind the code, what's behind the app, right?
No, they just see the output.
And then when you go to help, you just see this doc string. In essence, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like if you were to like, they'll never like reveal how they did this certain thing in the app. But like what I'm saying is like you as a coder, you have to understand like what the consumer wants, and
Uh-huh.
you put everything in here that will help them. But you have to really understand like what will make it efficient. You have to create all of this. But when you're trying to package this for someone, you don't want to be like printing all these lines of code. So that's why creating a function is easy because all you have to give them or all you have to ask them to do is body mass index inputs, right? This is for the
Hmm.
consumer's use. You tell the consumer, I have this app for you, body mass index app. All you have to input in it is your name and your height and your weight, and voila, you get something. You get your BMI.
Okay.
So, and the same with like that's why you want to do a function because it makes life easy for the consumer. Maybe not for the coder, but for the consumer.
Yeah.
But
That,
you as
that
the
makes.
coder, you have to understand like that's the end goal is how can I make it easy for someone to produce this type of app. And then what it is you don't want to give them all these lines of code, right? You want to only give them like this line of code.
They're the outputs.
Yeah. So so that's why you're using this one. So like I guess like let's try to interpret what this is. So you have this def what initializes the body mass index is the name of it, right?
Uh-huh.
And then what you have to think about like what are the inputs of the body mass index. I guess name is just something so I can print it, but you technically only need numerical stuff like height of the person in meters and weight of the person in kilograms.
Hmm.
And then install it takes those variables whatever you assign in it, and then you operate on those variables to create to output body mass index or to calculate it. And then like what I'm doing here, if else statement is just what if
If
you're healthy, or yeah, what's the output,
Yeah, so
But
if you're under a certain number, then you're healthy. If not, you're going to an else statement. That's where
yeah,
you're not too healthy based on what the
yep,
concatenation you're putting together.
yeah, yep, that's right, yeah, based on
Okay.
this is what it's doing, and then in the end the consumer just wants to know if they're healthy or not.
Yeah. Okay, and then
So
the string statement, that's the string is needed because that's going to be a number that's going to be populating out, right?
yeah, for the most
Okay.
part, like this is up the doc string is up to the coder. For me, what I really like to do is like if you can track like what are the different data types, so that like oh maybe I don't want height is obvious. Sometimes it's not as obvious. Like that's how you put a float. Does it take in an integer? Stuff like that.
Okay.
And then the same way with a loop. After you create like the function itself, you can just define like different inputs, right? Three
Hmm.
different inputs, and then all you have to do is input those inputs in one line,
Yeah.
and then it outputs for you. So takes in different inputs, same function. Different
Mhm.
inputs, same function. That's probably like the greatness of like the function because it's so general. It takes in different inputs of different things, but the functionality is the same. Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. That's
And
making
then
sense.
there's other applications, maybe like a coin toss. You can do a coin toss. It'll tell you like this is kind of like a heads or tails game.
Uh-huh.
We won't go over that, but that's really, I think, the gist of like how to create a function. Oh, oh shit. Okay, it's already 6.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
For the next one, I guess we'll cover. Let me see. The what did you want to cover next for the next one? Did you want to talk about the pandas and
Yeah, let's go through some pandas because I like pandas. It's pretty
okay,
clear.
okay,
And
and numpy or numpy?
yeah, yeah, if
Okay,
we go over all the functions in pandas so I can get an understanding,
okay,
because it's all like basic stuff, but I'm
yeah,
not connecting the
yeah.
two.
We'll go over like the syntax. The hardest part is
Yeah.
like where you apply it and then the syntax, because there's like tips and tricks. Like
Hmm.
there's things that you can do. I guess I'll provide it for you like to make life easy in like your code because you can do like a lot of things with a small line of code versus like 10 lines of code.
Yeah,
But
and I like to do small things because my lean thought process.
yeah, I'll teach you that.
Okay.
There's aggregate and all the group by and lock, I lock, all that stuff. And
Okay, yeah, if we could go through all that, that would be awesome.
okay, and then I guess API as well, right? Maybe we'll talk about API.
Yeah, if we
Get
get time,
to it.
yeah, API. Because
Oh, okay, all right. So I'll check my schedule again.
okay,
Maybe Monday. If does Monday sound good?
Monday I have class from, and
When was the last time we had the first one?
I think
I
we had
want
it.
to.
When did we have
Yeah,
it? Was it Monday or Wednesday? No, yesterday was Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah. Oh, it was Monday. I think it was
It was
Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know it was right
Do
before.
you want to just do that Monday and Thursday, and then maybe another day if we need to?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, because then like yes, like if you need like for example maybe this next the JSON stuff if it's difficult we could always schedule an odd day, but
Okay.
maybe start it first. Is it helpful if I send it to you or do you want to talk about it first? My solution.
You can send it to me, and if I'll like read it over, and
Okay.
then we could talk about it. Cause
And then
yeah,
maybe if you have like stuff that you're like struggling on, do you want to send that to me? I can definitely help you code it better or more efficiently.
yeah. I do want to get to that point. I just want to understand what I'm doing before I send you things. 'Cause
Okay.
I don't want to embarrass myself where you're like, oh my gosh, this girl doesn't know anything.
We'll keep it open. Like it's
Okay.
not that. I just I want you to ask me anything.
Yeah, no, I will. Because I know we have the API homework coming up. That's going to be due
Yeah.
on Wednesday, which is fine. And then after that, it's going to be a project, which I'll deal with that. But I'm
Okay.
hoping in that time frame, I'll start to get more comfortable with
Okay.
everything. And then once we have homework again, I can start like, hey, this correct? Am I doing this correctly?
Okay.
Because I
I
don't
think
want to be copying and pasting people's codes. I want to do it myself.
the one thing that worked well with the other people like they usually do like the assignment first maybe in the weekend
Hmm.
or something like that and then we'll kind of reconvene like maybe on a Monday or Tuesday before the deadline and kind of like go over like, oh, I got this error. How can I debug this? Or
Okay.
is there like something here that like maybe I could do this a different way, but I'm just not seeing it? Something like that.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Does that work? Yeah. Maybe a Monday or yeah. I think my Sunday is really packed, but Monday it works for me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Anytime. Just before 5:30, I think would be fine because we
Okay.
have class.
Okay. Lisa, yeah. Please send me any other question, and I guess I'll send you. You'll see from me the Zoom and then the solution, if anything, and we'll talk about it on Monday.
Okay. Very cool.
Cool. All right. Have a good one.
Thank you, Paul. Have a good day.
Yep.
Night.
Yeah.